We are here live, more or less, from Las Vegas with
Las Vegas.
Mark Anthony and Rick Rosen. What are we doing?
What are we doing?
what the hell did I miss? Good morning, Mark. What's happening, man?
This has got to be one of the slowest sports week news weeks all year.
With all kinds of stuff actually happening, is this the postpartum depression from Pacquiao Mayweather? I mean, we have just had last Saturday a horse once again win the first two legs of the Triple Crown, and now is going to go to the Belmont, where there are now 10 horses, I believe half of whom, or thereabouts, have not raced in these first two races in either of them, or raced in an equivalent race somewhere else, same distance or something like that. I don't care if they've actually run the Derby and the Preakness, but it's like saying, to me, it's like saying, okay, we have two events and we're only going to crown one winner. We have a marathon and we have a triathlon, which includes a marathon. Okay, so the triathlon people have to do the swim and the bike first and then run the marathon. The marathon guy only has to run the marathon. Well, I'm going to tell you my money's on the marathon guy.
Yep.
That's the only effort, and that's what they have now set up in the Triple Crown races. And it's stupid. Pick one or the other, but they're mixing apples and oranges as far as I'm concerned. So,
Totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, horse racing continues to shoot itself in the foot. If you look at what everybody else has done, everybody that I can think of in sports, to have tweaked their playoffs and they're crowning a champion, it is, some of it is not necessarily all for the good, but they do it for the TV money, which means more people are able to see it. You know, we buy Tide and Budweiser beer and whatever. We enjoy watching NASCAR. For the longest time until yesterday, I did not have cable television, so I was at the mercy of whatever was free. And you can watch pro football, you can occasionally watch basketball, rarely watch baseball, as many games as they play, but they all tweaked their playoffs, tweaked that final to get that championship thing. Even NASCAR now has the final at Homestead. They have the race for the chase, which breaks it into 2 seasons, and then they have that playoff run with the 10 races at the end of the season. And for that, we get a champion that's different than the championships won by Richard Petty or won by Dale Earnhardt, and nobody gives a damn. You can't tell me which of Jimmy Johnson's came under the old and under the new, or whoever it is. The thing is the same. The champion's the champion. So every other sport seems to have tweaked, either allowing in wild cards. Used to be just the 2 teams that met in the Super Bowl were the 2 champions of the league. And if each league had their own championship game, it was one damn game. So when the Raiders and the Packers met, when the Chiefs and the Packers met, that was it. They each played one championship game to get into the Super Bowl. Now you have to play in a whole nother 6 weeks of football or thereabouts if you're a wild card to get to the Super Bowl. And that's a huge difference, but nobody cares. The Packers are the Super Bowl champs for them first 2 games, and Aaron Rodgers' Packers, who had to come through a whole different setup, got there. And I think horse racing is going to have to make the change. Boxing has 8 gazillion champions. They broke that up, and they have tried, not with great success, to have tournaments. They had the middleweight tournament a few years back, which was quite interesting, and you got to see Ward, and you got to, it was exposure for some of these guys in the lower weights than heavyweight. But everybody has tweaked, every sport has tweaked their playoffs to have this big championship thing, except horse racing. If he wins the Belmont, I mean, it'll take a superb effort. And the horse has shown me probably a little more than I thought he had. I thought Dortmund was going to be, of the stablemates, I thought Dortmund was probably going to be the better of the 2. But that's why I do radio and not the racetrack.
That yes. That's why you're here and you're not on the back of a horse. Well, that in the
Yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah. Bigger Clydesdales rarely qualify. You know, they one of the I've got to tell you a little horse racing story. Dwayne Lucas is a legendary horse trainer. If there was a Mount Rushmore for horse trainers, Dwayne Lucas would be on it. And I was on with my partner Joe at Caesar's Palace. And what do you know about horse racing, Mark? Have you ever delved into it or gone to the track, or do you know anything about the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crown and those kind of things? Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's for the Triple Crown races are for 3-year-olds. Okay. My next door neighbor just had her 100th birthday. It's a thing that is marked by time, but it only occurs once. So my partner Joe says to Dwayne Lucas, who was the defending Kentucky Derby trainer, a winning trainer, and I forget the horse that he had. I think it was in 1990, so it would have been 89 or 90. Anyway, my partner Joe asked Dwayne Lucas, "What are the chances of your horse repeating?" And Lucas thought he was kidding. He thought he was joking, and so he answered, and it was a true test of my radio. Every possible thing you could work into, talent, desire, everything I could do to think of something to get us out of this without losing the entire gig at Caesars. So we laughed and giggled, and Joe had no idea what he'd said. You know, it probably was one of my finer moments eventually on radio. But yeah, whole lot of people for a long time when they talk to me, they say, "Is your partner still waiting for a repeat in the Kentucky Derby?" Yeah.
Yeah. Hey.
Right.
Okay. So since we're down this vein of tweaking sports, NHL Stanley Cup. I mean, that used to be done with by what, March? Now it's going into June or July.
When the ice melted. March, early April. This is a sport that came from being played outside. Now they play it outside every once in a while. It's a great show, but that's where, that is hockey. You're from Minnesota. When does a freeze break? Towards the first few weeks of March, it starts getting warm. You say, "Oh crap, we better get out there one or two last times on the pond," and then it melts, and hockey season is over. Every other sport, they could play year-round. And once they started making ice inside, it became an inside sport. But it comes from that outdoors thing. And so hockey's in this. Do you know who's playing in the Eastern Finals? This is to go to play for Lord Stanley's Cup.
Tampa Bay, isn't it?
Do you know who it is? Tampa Bay and the New York Rangers. And Tampa Bay looks to be the better of the two teams. They have they won in triple overtime or something. I believe it was yesterday, and they were giving away goals like candy at Halloween. It was every time you looked up, somebody was sticking it in. There was an answer. It was like watching a heavyweight fight. But just back and forth, and the goalies were kind of like, "Wow, where'd that little black thing go? Oh crap, the light's on again." And they, the back of the goalie's neck was getting sunburned from the light. So, but your Tampa Bay, I mean, if they hold Lord Stanley's Cup, it just doesn't have the same cachet as the Montreal Canadiens or the Detroit Red Wings or the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're in the news now this week.
Look,
the Maple Leafs are.
Look at the western side.
Oh yeah, got the Ducks.
Yeah, who used to be the Minnesota, which used to be Minnesota North Stars. But
the Dallas team used to be the Minnesota North Stars. That's why they were the Dallas Stars.
Yes, that's what it was. Sorry.
The Ducks were a franchise that came about because of the movie. So they have Walt Disney and the wonderful people there to thank for their creation. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I mean, it just loses something, you know. And the people that support the team in Tampa Bay, they do a great job there. There's a lot of Northerners and a lot of people who did not necessarily grow up with hockey, but kind of see what the other people see. Wow, that's a pretty fun game, and so they become fans even though they were not bred on it. So they have the best of both things down there. I mean, hockey's a passionate enough sport, and there's enough fighting in it. Obviously, the closer you are to any coastline or any border, there's a bigger Hispanic population coming up from the south. So as Florida has expanded or whatever, Tampa Bay now has a fairly sizable Hispanic population, which supports the hockey team very well. And that's kind of, I think that's really cool. So I don't think there's a great deal of Hispanic players in hockey. They just recently, it hasn't been that long ago that it wasn't such a novelty that everybody knew the black guy on any one team, and not every team had him. Now they're much more able to make the league if they nobody really cares what color they are anymore. But that used to not be the way. Grant Fuhr, who was the goalie for Wayne Gretzky's Edmonton Oilers when they won 5 Stanley Cups, was the guy, and he just was the one guy, and thank God he played. But I mean, you're pretty much talking a Jackie Robinson type of opportunity for Grant Fuhr to win the Stanley Cup and be the guy. I mean, it's not like he's a winger or a defenseman who's out there now and again, and something can happen while the guy's sitting on the bench. The goalie's out there, and so that kind of pressure, Grant Fuhr handled it incredibly well. And one of the greatest goaltenders that I've ever seen play. Now, granted, he had Mark Messier out front on defense, he had Wayne Gretzky on the wing on offense, and several other players of note on that team. But nonetheless, Grant Fuhr kept the little black thing from hitting the back of the nylon. So, things have changed that way, Mark, for the NHL with their fan base. NASCAR went through those changes. They came, from just being a southern good old boy kind of thing. And once people got exposed to it, they say, "Hey, look, them guys are just going around in circles, and oh, look, there goes one rolling over 18 times right down there in front stretch." And so their northern neighbors said, "Hey, yeah, that was cool." So speaking of wrecks and rolling down the front stretch, holy crap. The Indy 500,
I love that.
I have the notes here. The Indy 500 is this weekend on on Sunday, more than a week before real Memorial Day. But we're having Memorial Day on the 25th of May this month. Anyhow, on Sunday, they're going to run the Indy 500. And later that day, they run the World 600 for NASCAR. And last year, Kurt Busch did the double duty. They changed the cars all dramatically. They only have Hondas and Chevys. They changed this aero package for the vehicles, and they used to have the whole month. They had carburation day, and they had testing, and they had qualifying on 2 different weekends, and bump day, and all this, and everything was cool. Now, Indy, the lead up to Indy is just another race for the most part. Stuff. Right. It's not near the pomp and ceremony and the entire month that it is. They don't have carburation day because they don't have carburetors anymore. So that technology kind of eliminated that, and that seemed to be the beginning of the end. And now they got rained out, and their qualifying was screwed up, and it wasn't the big show that they needed. The next thing is they changed the aero package, which they do in NASCAR, and they do in Formula One, and they do in all forms of NHRA does it. They change up these rules to get to a place they want to get to competitive-wise, to make it a level playing field. Right. What they don't, it's called unanticipated consequences. Unexpected consequences of this change in their aero package was it did give them more downforce, but for whatever reason, it was Chevys going upside down with the 3-time winner Helio Castroneves had a scary crash. Ed Carpenter and Joseph Newgarden, all 3 were driving Chevys. All 3 hit the wall and went upside down. The air got under them, and pretty scary. James Hinchcliffe, the guy who should have won the Indy 500 but crashed coming out of 3, I believe it was, or maybe out of 4, on the very last lap of a race he was leading because he tried to get a little greedy and pass someone rather than just staying in line. He had a huge lead. Anyhow, James Hinchcliffe, wonderful driver, but in a Honda, hit the wall with the right side. Something just snapped loose and put him in the wall, and the right rocker, part of the suspension, pierced his left thigh, and he almost bled to death.
Ouch.
And yeah, it took some heroic efforts, medically speaking, to save this guy's life from part of that car piercing you. And a few years ago, I believe it was Roberto Guerrero, hit a tire that had come off of another vehicle, the entire wheel assembly, came off and launched it into the stands, and it hit someone in the stands and killed them. And Indy mandated, they said we're not going to have that anymore, and they used the straps, pretty much like the same straps that are in the safer barriers. And they attached the tires, the wheels, that whole assembly can't really leave unless it leaves with the car. Now, God forbid a car should ever get up into them stands. The carnage it would do. I believe it happened in one of the Formula One races. I think it might have been Monte Carlo, when a car went into the stands and killed like 23 people. And imagine they're going, 60 or 70 miles an hour faster. They just get the opportunity to hit more people there if that ever happens.
Yes.
So keeping them on the ground is a very, very important thing to them. Keeping parts on the attached to the cars is the next step in what they have to do. When they leave the ground, now they're not hitting the walls, they're hitting the fence. And that fence, as you know, Mark, you've been out there at the Speedway, Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It's a wonderful thing, man, and it does catch a whole hell of a lot of cars. But between the two of them, you're going to want to stand behind the wall or lay behind the wall if you have your druthers, if you're going to, if something's coming at you. So once they get up near that fence area, there's parts and stuff like that could go in and injure fans, which is the nightmare for any racing thing. But they're having this problem, man. The race is coming up. I mean, it's Sunday, so can't just throw everything out and say, okay, screw you guys, start from scratch. Or go to last year's design. I mean, they put millions and millions and millions of dollars and uncountable man hours into this product that they have out here now. So what they did, they reduced some speed. They put, I don't know if it's like a restrictor plate kind of thing that they might have done. Whatever they did, they took about 9 miles an hour or thereabouts out of these cars. And some of the power, they don't have the immediacy to hit the gas and have it be like a dragster taking off anymore. It's going to be a smoother thing because they have less horsepower. And they took about 9 miles an hour. Scott Dixon sits on the pole at 2:26.7, and cars were lapping in practice at 2:33 and 2:34. So you obviously have to think that for a 4-lap jaunt, somebody was going to hit or approach 2:35, and that's just, we've reached the point where is the setting of the new record and the speed more important than being able to watch it? Because I'm going to tell you, when something's going past you at 235 miles an hour, you're talking about almost 3 times the average fastball in a Major League Baseball game. You're talking about a really quick thing happening. All right, if I miss it, well, it sounded like a good race. I didn't actually see any of it. I seen some blurry, funny colored paint things go by, but that was about it until they wrecked.
But now we had that talk here in Vegas when the IndyCar crash happened here on whether or not they have they reached the top speed of civility, I guess, is the easiest way to say it.
Or sanity.
Sanity, yes.
Yeah, I think that was the word we were looking for, Mark. It was one of the darkest days of my life, Mark, and I've got the photos, and I look at them every once in a while because I've saved them 2 or 3 different places. When I'm searching for something else, they'll come up every once in a while.
Right.
And my favorite of the whole thing is Dan Weldon coming down the steps, and I'm standing at the bottom of the steps, and I say, Dan, and he he gives me the thumbs up and is standing there in a beautiful white suit. He's the two-time Indy 500 winner who wore a shirt about Danica in good humor. I mean, he's the guy that she pushed both hands in his chest and pushed him after a race, and so there was not a great deal of love lost, at least on the track between the two of them, and he handled it with real grace and humor. And all the press was around Danica, and he was wearing a shirt that said, "I actually won the Indianapolis 500."
Ooh,
and
yes.
and so payback is what it is, and so but it was humorous, and so they were cool. And Danica was when Dan Weldon was killed. The photos I took of Danica, I've never really put out anywhere, Mark. They are her in one of those most open moments. You just couldn't, she was as naked as she had ever been, standing there and tears running down her face, and here's this tough, I mean, it's a macho sport, and Danica's in it, and the closest guy near her was Tony Kanaan, who finally won Indianapolis. A wonderful man, just a guy who, one of my favorite pictures with Adriana Marias at the Pro Bull Riders. They were sitting down below, and I walking through the back way, and I said, "Hey man, let me get a picture." And so they both wanted it, but they were standing there, and just that look on Danica, how vulnerable she was at that moment. It was really I mean, I suppose I could have made some money out of the pictures, Martin, but it was that situation. That day was sucked.
But I want to go back to that, because both you and I think Sazzy got similar photos of Danica.
Look what Ace got.
Of coming out of the trailer when they had the meeting on whether or not to carry on the race, and a lot of photographers, just out of courtesy, put their cameras down, and then when they did the lineup, like you said, that photo of Danica just was like the moment. It just captures that entire moment of the feeling of everyone. But yeah, she was the one that was most open to it all. She was the one that actually openly cried, which really kind of warmed a lot of people's hearts, because but yeah.
And like I say, it's almost like somebody who you read about it in the paper all the time. The guy left, got pissed off at his wife that morning and left and got in a wreck and died. And the last thing will haunt them the rest of their lives. The last thing was an argument, Yeah. So now the at least they had made up. They were partners. I mean, they weren't close friends or whatever, but they had buried the hatchet simply because they both kind of handled it with some humor and got over it,
Right.
And people don't realize that about Danica, I think, Mark. I'm not her biggest fan, but I am certainly a fan of what she has accomplished. My God, she's outdone every other woman that's ever hopped in a car. Janet Guthrie was the first to do anything like that, Mark. But Danica took that and went ahead. Shirley Muldowney comes to mind as a female racer, and it's a pretty short list. You're done at a couple or three or something like that. So I'm gonna let me see if I have that photo, Mark, in here. I don't know if I do, but I have a better one of Danica. If you want it, I'll send it.
Okay.
All right.
How about we move on to something a little bit more brighter? Basketball.
Basketball. Yeah, there's LeBron James and the Cavaliers is playing basketball, and Atlanta had a better record and had the home court advantage. And Atlanta had a devastating injury to their team. Let me see. I want to make sure I say his name correctly. But anyhow, they not only lost the game, but they probably lost the series. It's very, very difficult to I think the first game after a real serious injury, everybody really steps up and so it doesn't seem to take effect except over the long haul. Well, it's a 7-game series if need be, and that is the long haul. And
Oh.
the Cavaliers were without Kevin Love. They have responded well, and guys have filled in. Certainly, guys are getting bigger minutes and doing something with them. Amon Shepard and J.R. Smith, who's a nut, but he was at Denver, then he went to the Knicks, and he's been around. This guy shot 8 threes in the court. From everything he let loose looked like it was laser guided. The CIA could use him to go after bad guys. It was amazing to watch this shooting exhibition, which he would not have been out there as much had Love not been down. So, DeMar Carroll, he's questionable for Game 2, but the long-term prognosis is good. No structural damage to Carroll's knee. If you look at the clip of that, I think he heard it on the step before it actually buckled. It looked to me like he took a misstep on that knee trying to make the corner to get to the basket with the ball. And initially it kind of looked like a foul, and you're like, that's an odd place for a foul. And then he took it. When you see the replay, and the next step, his knee kind of buckled.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign. They don't do that, and it doesn't recover overnight or whatever. And even if he can play, it's going to be in his head that he's going to hurt his knee again. So, and he's the guy that had LeBron. He was covering LeBron James. So that again is not like anything that is fun to do when you're 100%, much less being with a damaged knee.
Well, what's going on here in Vegas for summertime? The summer league.
The NBA Summer League is coming to Vegas, and that's always fun. I mean, you see great young talent in the NBA Summer League. It is absolutely. If you think a college All-Star game is cool, come to the NBA Summer League and watch, because you see guys that should have been on a college All-Star team and weren't, that are first or second year players in the NBA. You see guys coming in, you see draft picks, you see the whole shooting match. They get out here and get some track time, as they call it in racing. They get to play with the big boys and get used to that up and down. You're talking about let's do what world class athletes do, and let's do it for a couple hours at a time. And that's a tough call. These guys coming out of college, high school to college. There's a few more games in college than there are in high school, but it's leagues and whatever, so they're similar. College or high school now. These guys come out so quickly to the NBA. Holy crap! There's 82 what against who? And that's not that doesn't count the camp and everything that they do. That's why I think it's an incredible effort that these guys make, and they don't get the credit they deserve. Our USA basketball team that is purely NBA, and these guys come out, and after they've had their season, they're out there, and some of them are out there because they just love to hoop. And yes, you see guys like Kevin Durant and Paul George. God bless, he's been able to come back for Indiana this year after that terrible fracture of his leg. But again, it was a good, clean fracture, and the doctors did a wonderful job in putting him back together. And I think he'll go on and not skip a beat. It was not to a knee, to a joint, and that's I think that's almost always a better outcome. So anyway, Paul George is back. You look at James Harden and where he is, a tremendous player, second to Stephen Curry for the MVP in the NBA this year. That's not bad to be the second most valuable guy in the entirety of your league, and he gave Curry a run for his money. Any other season, he would have been the MVP, but Stephen Curry is just absolutely a ballistic. I mean, there is no real answer for him. His dad, Del Curry, was a hell of a player, and whatever the kid got genetically, he's added to with a tremendous understanding of the game. And another guy comes out of USA basketball, so when they get to play against that competition, that's the only way you raise your level. You can't raise your level beating up on little kids. You want to raise your level, you take on the big guys, and you do see what you've got. And it's Mark, I don't know if there's a bigger array of talent that we've ever seen in any given sport than what we're able to see at Basketball USA, and by just not a great deal of difference. The NBA Summer League that's going to be here too. You see some incredible talent playing basketball. Not every player on every team is amazingly gifted, but I'll tell you what, they're all really, really good basketball players. And you just like to see basketball where you don't have that team loyalty. It's kind of cool. I mean, you got the Lakers and the every team wears their name on their jerseys, but you don't see that same passion that you see in an NBA regular season or anything like that.
True.
By the way, speaking of the NBA.
Yes.
Isaiah Thomas was a longtime point guard, multiple championship-winning point guard for the Detroit Pistons, who played on a national championship team for Bobby Knight at Indiana. And people either love him or hate him. Michael Jordan doesn't love him, and that's why they call him Zeke. That's the main reason everybody on earth believes that he was not on the Dream Team. Not because he was not deserving, but because he and Michael Jordan didn't get along. And Jordan was fiery and whatever, but always pretty classy. When somebody beat him, he stuck out his hand and good job. And Isaiah Thomas led his Detroit Pistons teammates off the court without shaking hands following a game in which they lost the defense of their championship was no longer working for them. They lost and they just walked off, and it was very unclassy. And so Jordan didn't like Isaiah Thomas. He is back in the NBA in a manner that just, like, what could possibly go wrong? When he was in the NBA, he was with the New York Knicks eventually in the front office and worked his way up. And James Dolan decided that he was the know-all, see-all, be-all of basketball, and he was not. He screwed up the Knicks for years and years. They're still suffering. They had the second worst record and ended up at the fourth pick in the draft this year. But he had some real, almost not as many as Bill Cosby, but the same kind of thing. More than one person, more than one woman came out of the woodwork and said, Isaiah Thomas did this to me in my vaginal area. And now he is attempting to become back in the NBA through the WNBA, which is suffering a black eye from their Brittany Griner domestic. She is their marquee player. This domestic violence thing, and they gave her a 7-game suspension. I believe it was her and her significant other, who was also suspended and plays on the same team. Anyhow, the Board of Governors has to allow Isaiah Thomas to come back in as an owner, a part owner, and team president of a WNBA team. And you're thinking, what could possibly go wrong there? How much fun that must be for the PR guy. Well, there were the rape accusations, but, let's let bygones be bygones. We're all, women here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think somebody has said, okay, we don't need to, let's not have a press conference. He was just on ESPN, probably half an hour of doing a press conference about, that's in the past, and I'm here for the now and everything. Okay, that doesn't mean it's going to go away. Just because you want it to go away, don't mean it's going to be so. So it's going to be one of those albatrosses that's going to hang around his neck for a while, and I just think there's probably better fits than the WNBA. So anyway, yeah. I mean, does it make sense to you?
No. Well,
I'm hoping I'm not losing it totally. Next thing, does this make sense to you? Robert Kraft accepted the punishment without appeal of losing a first-round draft pick in the next draft in 16 and losing a fourth-round draft pick in 17. First of all, the Patriots don't give a damn. They'll trade somebody that's old and useless for somebody else's first-round draft pick if they need a first-round draft pick. They will, by hook or by crook, one way, work out a way to get the players they need to make their system work.
Right.
And they're hoping that Tom Brady's suspension, which should be 0, will at least go down from 4 to 2. Brady missing 2 games, okay, he can use the rest and he'll be sharper at the end of the season. They seem to run out of gas, seems to be their modus operandi in seasons past. But it is that system of next man up. Somebody goes down, next guy up, let's go, get in there. And Matt Castle subbed for Tom Brady when Brady got his knee hurt and led them to, I believe, an 11-5 record. They didn't make playoffs by a fluke, simply because of how the playoff system was set up. But next guy up is going to come up and play. I think it's Jimmy Garoppolo is going to play the first 2 games unless something happens in training camp or the appeal is done. But anyway, I think it's so much bullshit, Mark, about this deflate gate. Yes, it's a rule, and they broke the rule, and let's slap them on the wrist. But honest to God, it's almost like the Pete Rose thing. Okay, the guy didn't cheat on games. That's the intent of the rule. If the ball feels, they changed the air pressure for the frickin' punter. They let them change the air pressure for the kickers. Why did you leave this guy out? What is his girlfriend's too good looking? So now we've got to screw it. And of all things, to make such a big issue out of it, okay, if he knew or not, all right, find the guy or put a chastity belt on her for a week or something. But this is the punishment way past the crime, simply because they say, okay, we'll help the punters, we'll help the kickers, you can adjust the ball. Quarterback, screw you. Well, then let everybody play with the same ball, and then there's no question. Security is solved. Why let both teams have their own balls if you're not going to let them adjust them? What the hell? It's one more thing for the equipment guy to have to take on the road. Screw you. They'll play with the same ball. And I think how that rule came about, I believe they used to play with the same ball. And Lester Hayes, when he played with the Raiders, absolutely covered himself in stickum on the front of his jersey. And the ball would be so sticky the quarterbacks couldn't throw it. And stickum was just like snot. I mean, it was just, once you got on you could not get it off. If you tried to get it off on something, you just stuck to that something, And so then everybody, well, all right, you want to play with the ball with stickum on it, we get to bring in a new ball. So I think that's one of the reasons they do that. But there's no sense to it, Mark. If, NASCAR guys get to choose how much air goes in their tires, and they're going 200 miles an hour. And the Indy guys are going 235. And they okay, it's air pressure. If it feels better to you low, okay, play with it low. Or why let both teams have their own balls? You know what I mean? Make sense out of this. I don't like the hypocrisy of it.
Well, we know how you feel on this one. But,
it's just not so.
Yeah, what I see happening is they just want to get it out of the press, get it out of the news, just okay, we make it a 4-game suspension. Let's make it the preseason 4 games. How's that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just dumb. You're like, okay, what do you gain from that? I mean, and it was the game that it supposedly happened in was a 45-7 game. And the guy that did the investigation, well, if I'd had the electronic communications, screw you. Go find somebody's missing kid. Go pick up a frickin' milk carton and look and say, okay, I'm going to spend my efforts and what that education that I got at Harvard or whatever the hell law school he went to, and I'm going to do the right thing with it. And all right, somebody stand up and say, what's up, Joseph McCarthy? Have you no decency at all? It's gamesmanship. It didn't change a thing in the frickin' game. Let's go on.
Well, okay.
The only team that would have got a worse penalty would have been the Raiders.
Had they not had the ball deflated, they would have only lost by 6 points instead of 40 points. See?
Yes. Yeah. Indianapolis wasn't in that game from the time they pulled up into the parking lot. And the Patriots simply outplayed them in every facet of the game. There was an interception. So the defense had their chances to get their hands on them. In all honesty, if you look at any football game, the defense gets their hands on some balls. That's why these guys are playing defense. They don't really have the great hands, or they'd probably be on offense as a wide receiver or a slot back or something. But the guys that are fast, that don't have hands, play defense. You're a safety or a quarterback. So they're aided as much by a deflated ball as anybody. The receivers are known for having good hands, and in all honesty, Mark, if you could quantify the number, the difference that it makes to wear them frickin' gloves that have the adhesive that are on Post-it notes on their gloves, as opposed to taking some air one way or the other, adding it in, putting it out, whatever you want in the ball, it would be almost unmeasurable, the difference that the ball makes as opposed to what them gloves make. There are guys that played in the NFL in the good old days when they played in the mud and the blood and the beer. Fred Biletnikoff comes to mind. He would never have dropped the ball. He would never have dropped a pass. There are guys, you look at Lynn Swann. Imagine if Lynn Swann could have caught everything that Terry Bradshaw threw in his direction, because he could stick that hand out and get a glove on it, or get a hand on it. So, it's all relative. But honest to God, they do things to help the offense. You can't fart in the direction of the quarterback without getting a 15-yard penalty. You can't bump a receiver past 5 yards. They used to knock the hell out of each other all the way down the field. So They made all these changes, and now all of a sudden we're going to draw the line at air pressure in a ball that somebody may or may not have adjusted or known about when it was being adjusted. Somebody actually did something to make the game better. Well, okay. Thank you. Well, why not thank you? Here's the edict. Okay, just like the punters and the kickers, quarterbacks can adjust the air pressure to their liking. Okay. Yeah. Maybe his wide receivers like it all pumped up and hard. And the quarterback doesn't. Guess who's going to win that argument? The quarterback. It's in his hands every time. It's not in the receiver's hands except when the quarterback decides it is. So he's got the deciding vote. Why make it an issue? Why? If it makes your game better, if it makes a guy as incredibly good as Tom Brady is in playing the game of football better, why not do it? There's no logical answer to why not.
I agree with you totally on that one.
Oh my God! Did I hear you right? By the way, your Minnesota Timberwolves or Timberwolves now have a chance to waste somebody else's first few years of their great NBA pro career, a la Kevin Love and so many others up there in Minnesota. They got the first overall pick in the NBA draft. It's either going to be Okafor, Towns. Yeah, we've seen both of them play. Michael Towns, the kid from Kentucky, 6'11", played on the Dominican Republic team. That played, coached by John Calipari, that played the USA basketball team with LeBron and Kobe and everybody. I believe it was 2012, Mark, the last time that we saw LeBron here, and certainly Kobe for Basketball USA, and acquitted himself very well. I've got some cool photos up on the Facebook page of him mugging Michael Westbrook. Or Russell Westbrook, Michael Westbrook too. Russell Westbrook, formerly of the UCLA Bruins and now of the Oklahoma City Thunder. But anyway, Minnesota's got the first overall pick, and they're going to get a big guy out of it. And I don't know, how they keep screwing it up, but they seem to. There's obviously some cultural issues for whatever reason. People like to play somewhere else than Minnesota. The winters there, you are either good with it or you ain't. There's not a lot of gray area. I'm kind of ambivalent with winter in Minnesota. No such thing. And if you don't fish and what else? Water ski? What else do they do in the water in Minnesota? Fish, water ski, and
drink.
Drink. There you go. All right, that's ice fishing time, ain't it? Anyway, the Lakers jumped up. The Lakers supplanted the New York Knicks, who were going to get one of those two big guys, and they certainly need that. And by the draw of the balls, the Lakers got the number 2 pick. So the Lakers are going to have a pretty good chance of improving pretty quickly. Kobe may or may not be around, as I've said so many times. Once he tore the Achilles, he was never Kobe again. And I mean, look how really good he has been. He's almost 40 years old, and he's still playing after all the injuries that he's had the last few years to his legs, which are a tremendous part of his game. But nonetheless, Kobe's Father Time's knocking on the door, and Kobe's going to answer pretty quickly. So
Yep.
The Lakers are in that rebuilding mode, but they're in a good position. Take the number 2 pick in the draft if it is Okafor that they get, which I think a lot of people believe it will be. Towns going to the Timberwolves. They'll be improved dramatically, at least in the middle, at least on the inside. And that, I think you key it one way or the other. You either build your team off of a dominant center and move out from there, or you have guards that absolutely run the show. You look at Chris Paul and guys like Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas, and it's one of the two. You rarely build off your forwards to have any great deal of success. Sixers are number 3 in the draft, and that'll help them. The Knicks dropped to 4. They would have liked to have got the number 1 pick. They were hoping everybody, all the conspiracy theorists, think that the very first time they ever had the draft lottery, Patrick Ewing was a senior at Georgetown. The obviously much the most talented guy available in the draft, and the Knicks did not have the worst record, but came away with the number 1 overall pick and took Patrick Ewing, and the rest, as they say, is history. They never got the championship from him, but they certainly were one of the most entertaining teams and one of the better teams in the league all of the entirety of his career there. So maybe this is makeup for that, but the Knicks dropped to number 4. They wanted Towns, who's from New York and grew up a Knicks fan, and they were going to cash in on some free publicity that way, but it ain't happening. So Orlando, for the 5th time, is in the top 5. I think it's the 5th time in the last 10 years, or maybe it was 8 years, Mark, that Orlando is in the top 5 in the lottery. Do you know how crappy you have to be there's only 5 guys that can play at one time. You'd think the other 4 would introduce themselves to each other and say, let's win a few games, and at least get out of the 5 worst records in the league. There's no explanation for Orlando. But here they are, 5th. The Kings are picking 6th. George Karl and Vlade Divac, former Laker, and George Karl kind of sniping back and forth. And Vlade Divac is the team president. He went from the Lakers and played with the Kings very successfully. Very popular player. European, you see them kind of cashing in the European talent a little bit. A lot of that has to do with Vlade Divac and his contacts all over the world. Anyway, George Karl, a longtime coach in the NBA who never won it at Seattle and never won it at Denver and never won it anywhere, and now he's coaching the Kings and he's not going to win it there. Kind of the last gasp, hanging on to see who becomes available for the Kings. George Karl's not on the long-term deal anyway, but anyhow, he said that there was nobody that was untradeable on the Kings, and Vlade Divac, who signs George Karl's checks, disagreed. He said DeMarcus Cousins is untradeable, and DeMarcus Cousins, when we went to the NBA, the Basketball USA, Mark, the very first scrimmage, and I'm not sure if you were there, the very first scrimmage that we had, or Kenneth Faried from the Denver Nuggets was standing kind of under near the basket and reached out. DeMarcus Cousins was next to him, and these were teammates on Basketball USA. They weren't playing for anything. It was the first scrimmage of the game of the training camp, and Kenneth Faried simply put his hand out and barely set it on DeMarcus Cousins' shoulder, and DeMarcus Cousins threw an elbow that had bad intentions on it and knocked Faried's hand off his shoulder. And Faried moved back a half a step or so and then reached out and extended his arm further, and now only had like half of his hand touching DeMarcus Cousins, and Cousins threw another elbow. And again, if Fareed had walked into it, he didn't pull up at any time. It was thrown. If somebody had been in range, they'd have got connected with that elbow. And DeMarcus Cousins played at Kentucky, and he's a ball player, and he's one of those mean guys that really is mean, but he can play basketball. He's got a tremendous amount of talent. If he harnesses that anger and that fire that he plays with, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So anyway, Kings picking at 6 are going to give him some talent. They're going to try to surround him with talent, but I don't think it's ever a good sign that a coach says nobody's untradeable. You know, which coaches do to kind of leave it in the player's mind, hey, man, don't F with me too much or you could be out of here. And the team president says, nah, coaches are fireable, but this one guy right here we're talking about, he's untradeable. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that works. The Denver Nuggets picking number 7. They have their eyes on a young man that plays in, I think it's Croatia. And I saw a snippet of him, and I didn't write his name down, Mark, but wow, this kid plays like Larry Bird played. I mean, he really is a very, very talented young man, expected to go to the Nuggets at number 7. They've spent a lot of time drafting him and kind of figured this is where they were going to be. Not a lot of surprises in the draft order other than the Lakers and the Knicks. Everybody else did exactly as they were percentage-wise expected to do. The rest of the order, Pistons at number 8, Hornets at number 9, Miami at number 10. Dwayne Wade's getting old. Miami's got to put some pieces back together. The Pacers get the 11th pick overall. Obviously a step up in talent available to them in that pick, simply because of the injury to Paul George and all the nonsense that they went through in this season. Just so many distractions and so many things going on with the Pacers that they've made at least the lottery. And they're going to have some talent that they probably would not have gotten in a regular season had their guys not gone down. The Utah Jazz picking 12th, still a pretty good pick. There's going to be some good talent there, and the Utah Jazz has been on that periphery of we just got to get these guys some experience, some track time, and court time, I suppose. And they are once again going to add some depth to a young team, and you got to watch out for the Utah Jazz. Phoenix picking at 13 and Oklahoma City at 14 to add Kevin Durant needs to come back from his injuries. And man, I don't know, Mark. Have we seen the end of the NBA guys coming into the Basketball USA in droves? You look at the injuries that have occurred, not only to Paul George during the training camp, but you look at Kevin Durant out with injury. Russell Westbrook had problems. LeBron James has been dinged up. He's got those leg things that you see him hobbling around and limping around, even though he took this year off. You look at the guys that have been banged up. Although Harden's playing real well. Stephen Curry's playing real well. Anthony Davis was playing real well. I don't know which the trade-off is, Mark, from your long-term physical health as opposed to your ability to get better by playing against people that are your peers, that are your equals, or very near that in talent.
Yeah, time. It's just time, and I don't know, time.
Yeah, you're right. It's a mental game too when you're doing something at that level. And they do need time just to recharge and stick their toes in the bath water. So yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It's a wonderful experience, and the NBA Summer League coming here to Las Vegas, man. If you haven't seen it, you need to get out there and watch these youngsters play. If you like watching basketball, if you like watching young men get after it, this is the way to go.
That's it. All right.
Yeah.
Let's wrap her up.
All right, a couple things before we go, Mark. Coming up I think it's June 17th, at the Thomas & Mack is the Tough Enough event in honor of Barry Meyer, in memory of Barry Meyer, the originator of Tough Enough. It's going to be free. And how do you F up free? It's very, very difficult.
That's right.
So Jeff Meyer doing a wonderful job with Tough Enough I think it's a wonderful way to honor his brother Barry. And so we invite all our listeners, everybody that is friends with us, in contact with us, get out there to the Thomas and Mack, Pack the Mac. I think it's June 17th. It's tough enough. We'll have things up on our site.
Yep.
And it's a man. If you haven't seen MMA, this is kind of like the NBA thing. These are the kids wanting to make that move up. We had Ronda Rousey. You bet. We've had a whole lot of people come out of Tough Enough and go on to bigger and better in UFC, etc., including the amazing Ronda Rousey. So come out there. It's free. You can catch the bus. You can walk. You don't have to buy anything. You can walk in, and it's free. So we'll see you there. Mark, and thanks so much, buddy. Always a pleasure. We're going to be on next week, same time, same station?
Same time, same station.
All right. That works for me, man. Enjoy yourselves. Pro Bowl Riders on the Strip. The last Cowboy standing. And look, we even have our Pro Bowl Riders mouse pad. So anyhow, have fun, man. Thanks to all for listening. For Mark Anthony, all the fans here, friends, and workers here at Good Sports Media. I'm Rick Rosen. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.